What happens when a family's worst nightmare is not the tragedy itself, but the chilling silence that follows? On Christmas Eve, 1945, in Fayetteville, West Virginia, the Sodder family home was consumed by a devastating fire. George and Jennie Sodder escaped with 4 of their 9 children, but 5 were left behind. The fire raged with an unnatural intensity, and by morning, the house was reduced to a smoldering basement. Yet, when the ashes cooled, investigators found a baffling and disturbing void. Not a single bone, tooth, or fragment of human remains belonging to the 5 missing children. The official verdict was accidental death, their bodies incinerated by the blaze. But the Sodders refused to believe it. How could a fire hot enough to obliterate 5 skeletons leave household appliances and books largely intact? Why did their phone line appear to be deliberately cut? And who was the stranger who had recently warned George that his house would go up in smoke? Their search for answers would span decades, fueled by strange clues and a parent's undying hope. It's a story not just of loss, but of a mystery that endures, asking a haunting question. What truly happened to the Sodder children? Christmas Eve, 1945. In Fayetteville, West Virginia, the Sodder home buzzed with festive energy. 9 of the 10 children were home, their excitement a warm counterpoint to the winter chill. As the younger ones went to bed, the older siblings Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, and Betty were granted permission to stay up late, playing with new toys. But the night held unsettling omens. A strange phone call, a wrong number inquiry for an unfamiliar name, broke the calm. Later, Jennie Sodder noticed the lights were on and the doors unlocked, which was unusual. She saw a man in the shadows, watching the house from the main road. Dismissing these oddities, she returned to sleep, unaware that the Noel peace was about to be irrevocably shattered, and that she would never see 5 of her children again, their fates sealed in the cold December air. Around 1 a.m., a blaze consumed the wooden house with terrifying speed. George Sodder, his wife Jennie, and 4 of their children managed to escape the inferno. Frantically, George tried to rescue the 5 trapped upstairs. His ladder, usually stored against the house, was missing. His trucks, which he hoped to use to climb to the window, inexplicably failed to start. The fire department, slowed by a delayed call and a small-town volunteer force, arrived far too late. By morning, the home was a smoldering pit of ash. The fire chief conducted a cursory search and declared the children had perished, their bodies incinerated. Yet, a crucial, horrifying question arose from the cinders. In a fire that should have left skeletal remains, why was absolutely nothing found? The absence was more terrifying than any discovery. The official verdict was swift. A tragic accident caused by faulty wiring. But for the Sodders, this explanation was impossible. They knew the house had been recently rewired and inspected. The contradictions mounted. The phone line was not burned, but cleanly cut. The ladder was found discarded in a nearby embankment. A bus driver reported seeing people throwing balls of fire at the house. A neighbor claimed to have seen a man taking a block and tackle from the property, equipment that could have helped move the stalled trucks. An insurance salesman, who had previously threatened George Sodder over his anti-Mussolini remarks, was implicated by his own strange comments. The family began to suspect the fire was no accident, but a deliberate act of arson and abduction. A theory the authorities refused to investigate. Frustrated by the dismissive attitude of local law enforcement, the Sodder family took their search into their own hands. In 1952, they erected a large, haunting billboard along Route 16. It featured the portraits of the 5 missing children: Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, and Betty. Below their youthful faces, a plea for information and the offer of a substantial reward were displayed for all to see. The billboard became a permanent, sorrowful landmark in the Appalachian landscape, a testament to a family's undying hope and their refusal to accept the official story. For decades, it stood as a silent question mark against the horizon, a constant reminder to the community and to travelers that 5 children had vanished without a trace, and their parents would never, ever stop looking for an answer to their fate. More than 20 years after the fire, in 1968, a strange piece of mail arrived. It was postmarked in Kentucky and addressed to Jennie Sodder. Inside was a photograph of a man in his mid-20s who bore an astonishing resemblance to her son Louis, who would have been around that age. On the back of the photo, a cryptic, handwritten note was scrawled. The family, their hope reignited, hired another private detective to trace the letter's origin. The investigator traveled to Kentucky but vanished himself after reporting progress, never to be heard from again. The photograph became the last and most tantalizing clue in the case. It offered a flicker of possibility but ultimately deepened the enigma, leaving the aging parents with a haunting image and the unending question. Was this their lost son, a phantom from a past that would not rest?